There we are.
Hey,
Wasn't
honey, long time no see.
it has been a while. I see you're of an RV. How
Heck
appropriate.
yeah. I thought you'd appreciate that. I needed to get in the vibe.
Oh, did that better than I did, just in my house.
But you have books, and that makes sense.
I have a lot of books. I do have a lot of books. It was so funny. I had an interview with somebody at Lionsgate Entertainment
Ooh,
about the potential of these projects. And she finished the
nice.
thing. And she says, I have a question for you. I said, what's that? She said, what's Free the Pizza? And it was a book she could see on the shelf that, of course, is Mr. Parker's. So then we ended up talking about pizza.
That's really funny.
Yeah, as I seem
I
to
love it.
always end up talking about now. My life is pizza.
That's funny. I actually have my bookshelves that I bought recently. I just got a new apartment and the bookshelves didn't really have any and I was like I need something good. And so
Uh-huh.
I ended up getting these that are like shaped like this all the way up the
Uh-huh.
it's
Yeah.
like a little branch, and so the books are set this way and this way all the way up. And
Yeah.
it's really neat. Like it's just different. So
Well,
that's really
these are they're fruit crates
cool.
and just spray painted them white and made a little design and there they were.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad to anyone who is listening. This is going to be amazing. I'm very excited about this interview. Honey, I'll let you introduce yourself now.
Oh no. Um, let's see. Do I remember who the heck I am? Honey Parker is the name. And I suppose we are talking about my most recent novel, which is V Life.
Yes, I'm so excited. I have read over 50% of it now. I wanted to finish it before our interview, but since it's
Yeah.
non-spoiler, then I felt safe. Uh, but yeah, I wanted to get in the vibe of the RV life over here. And
Here,
yes,
I'll
there
get
we
in the
go.
vibe. I'll get in my V Life. And oh wait, the swag never ends.
That's amazing. I now need one of those. That's awesome.
Yes, you do.
How do we get those? Ooh, that's a good question. Is there a way to get that? Are
I
you
was
selling
just
them?
thinking about putting them up on the website. I never did anything like this for the Careful-ish series just because it didn't I don't know, but like vampires and RVs, I feel like people might want in on that.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
would I would be in
I
on
like
it
the
for sure.
logo. So
Uh-huh. We should do it.
yeah,
Make
so
it
I might put those up on my website because
very
I
cool.
made them.
Might as
Why not?
well, huh?
Yeah.
That sounds good. Oh, by the way, I'm Sarah Jessica Curry. I have this YouTube channel, Write Me Poetry, and I like to do interviews with amazing authors like Honey. So here we go. So I just want to say, this book, as with the Careful-ish series, which I still love, um, it gives me that vibe of reading a TV show. Like it's it's fast paced, it's the dialogue is on point, and it's just like every chapter has beginning, middle, end. It's like I can read a chapter and just feel fulfilled. Like I just read a whole story and then continue and it's wonderful. So what drives you to that? Is that the style that just like comes out?
Yeah, it seems to be natural. When so my professional writing background started in advertising. So everything was written to fit, in 30 or 60 seconds, and it had to have a beginning, middle, and end, that quickly. And then I took on screenwriting with Mr. Parker, and we sold, I don't know, a handful of screenplays. So, that's very much about like each page is got to be an invitation to read the next page. And I'm such a dialogue lover. I just love great dialogue. Like the last scene in Moonstruck is one of my favorite scenes in a movie ever because the dialogue is just so snappy and the characters are so great. Yeah, I guess that's just, certainly when I wrote this book, I'm not as surprised with the Carefulish books because I actually originally wrote the first book. I wrote a sitcom, a pilot for a sitcom before I wrote the book. So this one, it surprises me that if that the people who've read it so far are starting to say that again. I guess it's just what I do, you know?
Well, I love it. It's not a bad thing at all. It's one of those, especially with like the fast-paced society we have now, that
Mhm.
instant gratification kind of thing, it's like it gives you a, even if you're in a hurry or, something like that, you have something to hold on to and think about and like, I wonder what's going to happen next.
Well, cool.
Great. I
Well,
know in our
whatever.
last interview, you were worried for a second because I said Carefulish was my elevator book. And you were like, is that a bad thing? And I said, no, it's good. I have to take the elevator every day at work from the second floor to the first floor, just over and over. And every time I can read, even a whole chapter in that one elevator ride. And
Yeah.
that was awesome. Gives me something to
These are a
enjoy.
little slower. The chapters are a
Yeah.
little longer in V Life, but yeah,
I
snappy-ish.
remember one scene so far that is the whole paragraph is just playing with a cat with a paper ball. And it's just,
Yeah,
I just read that and I was just like, I totally relate to that. I know exactly how that's going, and just the
yeah.
way you use the language is awesome.
Well, having had a cat and having had a cat way before a husband, living by myself, the cat and I, yeah, there's a lot of playtime, and I'd love it. I do love how cats play. They're just
Mm.
it's great.
Yeah, it's so much. I mean, cat videos are all the rage, and you're adding a little video in a book.
Well, she so this character, my main character, Sugar Bernstein, which is so far my favorite name ever for a character. Um, Early on, she gets a driving mate. She's driving in an RV across the country, and she adopts this cat, and it becomes her sidekick. And I remember when I lived alone in New York and I had a cat, you just feel less crazy speaking out loud when there's another being in the room. And so it let her speak out loud certain things. I mean, certainly some is really directed to the cat, but other things are just talking, and getting the thoughts out. So having the cat there was quite helpful.
I love how you reference the cat's responses. Like when it says meow, and she's like, really? Like she understood, what the
Yeah,
cat said,
yeah.
things like that. That's
Well,
so funny.
I found that my cat would do that, and I suppose anybody who's got a pet, they fill in the blanks and they often tend to have the right inflection. And so you just keep it going. You
Yeah,
know, just yes
exactly.
and yeah.
So one other thing that you mentioned that's a theme in the book is that Sugar has a Jewish family. She grew up Jewish and things like that.
Yes.
Like, where do you relate to that?
Well, 100% growing up in a Jewish family. Uh, it was interesting because in Carefulish, in my last series, I gave one of the characters, like I really gave her my parents.
Hmm.
I didn't want to do that exact same thing here. Um, so I knew that she was from a Jewish family, but I didn't want to make her parents my exact parents. Although, there are just some things that are cultural that you just can't avoid. They are every Jewish parent ever. There are just
Right.
these patterns. And I love incongruity and just this, she stayed in touch. She has stayed in touch with her brother for better or for worse, her twin brother. And so he not knowing that she's a vampire is just talking to her about life. And his daughter she's got a bat mitzvah coming up. And I just love the incongruity of here's this character, Sugar Bernstein, who's trying to figure out how to live as a vampire and all the things that are required for vampire living. It's, her diet, and, it gets rather dark. And balanced with that, she's got to kind of come up with excuses why she can't make the bat mitzvah. And, the whole thing was, if this actually happened, what would the honest responses be? It's if you're a vampire, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get family pressure to do the family gatherings, and you're going to have to figure out how you're going to make money to last this life with seemingly no end. I mean, I remember when I was a kid and I saw the movie, was it Outlander, where they just live for, was it?
I know what you're
But
talking about. I can't think.
okay,
They
so
live
they,
for a long time.
and they just live and live and live. And the guy is an antique dealer. And I'm like, okay, well, that's all well and good, on the face of it. But how did you start? I mean, did you just hold on to shit for like 100 years until it became an antique?
Right.
And until then you just need a boatload of storage, like what is the true math of this existence? And it's a
Right.
pain in the ass, you know?
Yeah, that's something I had never considered when she started asking her friends, like, how do you make money? What do you do to keep
Right.
going? So I'm curious to see how that turns out.
Yeah.
And there was
It's a
something you
big
mentioned
part of the
earlier.
second book that I'm
Okay.
writing.
Oh, yeah, second book. Okay. I like the
Yeah.
sound of that.
Yeah.
How's the second book going?
I'm about 60 pages in.
Okay.
And the most recent book was 360 pages. So I guess I have about 300 pages to go. Um, I know some of the big things that are going to happen. I've already had a couple of surprises, in a
Mhm.
fun way for me. Um, and it's just, my challenge is there are all of these things that I want to have happen, and it's pacing. It's like, okay, well, what's going to wait for book three? What makes sense to have now? Because, it's got to step out in a way that makes sense as she evolves in her skills and understanding and all of that.
That's one thing I really enjoy about it is so I'm reading a book that's a lit RPG. I don't know if you've heard of that genre, but it's like, or they sometimes call it game lit, and it's when a
Mm,
character ends up being in a video game and they're a video
yeah.
game character. But in this series, the guy who ends up a character, it's not really a video game. It's Earth and it's been destroyed, and they've created this like underground dungeon where he has to like fight creatures and all these things.
Hmm.
So they're it's that whole video game thing, but for me, what's fascinating is his reaction because it's if this happened to me, how would I react to it? So it
Hmm.
doesn't feel like this fantasy world. It feels very real. Like if this happened, what would I do? And I feel like that's what's going on with Sugar and the way I can relate to her so well because she's like, what the freak? Like, what do I do? Like, how do I survive? What are the I love how
Yeah.
she's collecting all the books that have been written over the years that may or may not be factual about vampires. Like, is
Right.
this about me? Let me go try it out.
Yeah. And yeah, it's definitely like I wanted to take everybody on the journey. You say it like, what would I do in this situation? There was a movie years ago, not in this genre at all, but with Kurt Russell, called Breakdown. And he's driving across the country with his wife for a new job. And they become prey to this gang. And without superpowers, without becoming, this great action hero that would typically be in a movie, it's he's trying to figure out each next step, like, how do I get through this? What do I do? And so that's, what she's doing. How do I
Yeah,
eat?
just Yeah. What
And
do I
just
eat?
the whole ridiculousness of it too, like it just seems absurd that you would have to actually drink blood. Like that just seems like movie bullshit. But
Yeah.
at some point you have to eat something because she's just losing weight. Uh, which on
Yeah.
one stick hand is kind of like, hey, like
Right.
every poor, woman with body issues is like, oh, maybe I don't need Ozempic. Maybe I can maybe I can become a vampire.
I'm a
You know,
vampire. Fix everything.
yeah. Um, but it just sounds ridiculous. Like I don't know if you noticed, but she never says vampire because it just seems so stupid to her.
Huh. Interesting.
It's just a couple. I was in a situation once years ago where I was in an elevator with somebody who I'm going to try to condense this, who basically passed out. And I saw that she was going to pass out and I grabbed her and I pushed her against the back of the elevator so she wouldn't fall over. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to feel like an idiot, but I'm going to do this. And I just started yelling, help. And the first time you yell help, you feel like an idiot. You're like, this is
Huh.
just dumbest thing. But then you kind of get into it because it's important.
Yeah.
And yeah, she just felt it just feels too stupid to say it.
Interesting. Yeah, I wondered too on that note with vampire books and movies and things like that being popular and then kind of fading a little bit. How did you get into this and like feel confident in, okay, I'm writing a book about vampires. Like, how did you make it different enough to jump into that genre?
So, okay, so I actually had the idea for this book before I started Careful-ish.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, Mr. Parker and I, as I affectionately call him, we were driving across the country for this podcast that we were doing called Couple Co, Working with Your Spouse for Fun and Profit. So we were driving across the country. We did all our interviews in person. We said we show up with wine and microphones. So so we're we're in this RV, and I thought, this would probably be a good setup for a vampire because people aren't looking over your shoulder so much. They aren't realizing that you're not aging. There's all this stuff, and perhaps you could sleep in the equipment box. And so it's just like that thought. And then like a sad thing happened to go on top of it. A friend of mine died in a ski accident, and his wife, who was also a good friend of mine, was now left with two young kids, and she's having to solve everything in her life by herself. And like when you're in a couple, there's usually one who does the tech stuff and one who does the this stuff and one who does the that stuff and one who does the this stuff. So all of a sudden she had to do all the stuff.
Mm.
And that's Sugar's situation because she's got to figure out the vampire thing. When the book starts, the love of her life is already dead. So that's kind of a spoiler alert, but not really because it's right there. Um, and so she's got to figure out all the stuff that he would have naturally done. And so it's just all of this new stuff to figure out. So that was part of it. And I still couldn't write it. I was like, I don't really totally get her yet. Um, and then finally I thought, what if this had happened to me when I was living in New York, when I was working in advertising in New York, and this was something that happened to me, how would I react? And then I had it. Then I
Mm.
was like, oh, she comes from this Jewish family and she's got all this guilt and all these ways, and then all of a sudden it felt real and honest to me and not necessarily something that I had seen before.
I love that you waited until it was right.
Yeah.
That's
Years. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but that's great. That's when I mean, I can tell in the story, you're very comfortable, getting in there and giving those details and having that conversation that she has with her friends and
Hmm.
uh very new friends.
Yes. New friends.
And one thing you mentioned the Jewish family again. I remember one scene, really like a monologue in her head of she was talking about how Curtis, not ex, her boyfriend that died,
Right.
how he would tell her like if she wanted to go out, go ahead, like go ahead, I'll just stay home. And she
Right.
was like, like, do I really trust that? Like, if my parents said that, and you had like the whole thing about
Right.
what our parents would actually mean, I actually ended up sending that to a friend of mine, just that one paragraph,
Uh-huh.
because we've had those kind of conversations about intentional. Like, what do you mean when you say something like,
Right.
I've always wanted to be one of those people that like I say it, that's what I mean. And so I sent her that paragraph. I was like, this is what I mean. And I just love when authors like you are able to put that little bit of wisdom in there, or that little bit of
Hmm.
relatability. And you're like, yeah, what she said.
Yeah. Well, I remember, I mean, I certainly have been through that. When Mr. Parker would be like, yeah, go ahead, I don't care. That's certainly not what I came from. Like, that did not mean the words that were actually just said. So it took
Mhm.
me like years to trust it.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually told
Yeah.
my friend the other day, I said, no pressure. And she was like, I was like, no, really, like literally not no pressure. I really mean
Right.
that.
Right.
But that's a hard one too. You hear no pressure all the time. And it's like, that actually means pressure. It's like,
Right. Well, now you threw the word pressure out there and now it's there. That's like when someone
yeah,
says,
exactly.
trust me, you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't trust them.
I know it's so sad, but so
Yeah.
real. That's
Yeah.
funny. So, is there anything else? I know one thing that you mentioned that sugar experiences that you also have experienced is, let me say it right, misophonia.
Misophonia. Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
thought I understood it, but I think you could explain it better.
Maybe I can. So, it people like myself, are just too tuned in sometimes to noises. Like if somebody's tapping, even just that seeing that motion, like
Mm,
I now cannot focus on anything besides that. And mouth noises are the worst. Like
mm,
mouth noises, Mr. Parker will go outside to eat an apple. Like he literally knows that it just, and I feel horrible about it because it's not the other person's fault. It's not like they're doing something evil, but it just goes up and down my spine like a hot knife to the point where, like, if I know that somebody's having cereal and I hear like the spoon on the bowl, that is enough to say mouth noises. And it's,
wow.
I really have to calm myself down. And I thought that it would be hysterical if this vampire had misophonia. I mean, it bothers me to eat sometimes, like the sound of me eating
Your
is
fangs come out, right?
my fangs come out exactly. And so, I mean, that's going to be a trigger for her, like gum chewing, as she goes along. You may not have gotten there in this book yet, but there's a gum chewing incident that gets
I
a little
think I
big.
I think I just did actually. I think I
Oh,
just
okay.
just went past that point. Yeah. And
Laundromat?
yep.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Laundromat, exactly.
Yeah.
Um oh, the mouth noises. Um, I had a book that I narrated, and I do my own audio editing, and my mouth noises drive me nuts. Like when I'm listening back to it,
Oh,
had one line, it was Cranston slowly circled. That was the worst mouth noises. I was like, ah, and I did that line so many different times,
yeah.
and how do I need cotton? Like, can I dry my mouth out?
Yeah.
Just.
Wet whisperers make me crazy.
Mhm.
I remember here, I'm going to totally name drop. When I was living in LA, I had met Melissa McCarthy at Groundlings and we became friends. And I remember we were hanging out and I had said to her, yeah, wet mouth noises make me crazy. Wet whispering. And she said, what's wet whispering? And I did it for her, and she was like, "Oh my God." Like, "Oh, don't never do that again."
Awesome.
Yeah.
That is hilarious. Yeah. Can you,
Yeah.
would it, can you do it on Zoom? Would I be able to hear it? Maybe?
Oh, you'd be able to hear it. Can I do it? I'm leaning in. Um, there's a thing over there where they went to. Can you hear it?
Yeah. Yeah, I know what
Horrible,
you,
right? Yeah.
yeah, it's like using the smacking to make the words instead. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid,
Rough
actually, my mom
stuff.
was very much stop smacking, like don't, like those kind of noises. So I think
Yeah.
hers is milder, I think, than Sugar's, and maybe yours. But I definitely have had those interactions,
I've really tried to work on it over the years. I'm much better than I used to be, but we're all a work in progress.
Absolutely, all the
Yeah.
time. So speaking of work in progress, so Sugar, as I'm reading it now,
Yeah.
sh- she's met new friends. So I know you wanted to talk about the friends that she's met. What did you have in mind for them?
Um, you know, in the upcoming uh promotional stuff, one of the things that Mr. Parker wrote was undead friends can be the family you choose. You just can't invite them to the bat mitzvah. And,
Nice.
yeah, and I wanted them to have that feeling, the family you choose. You know how like sometimes you just come across somebody and you're like, that's that's going to be my person. That's my person. And I wanted that for her because she's so by herself now. I mean, she's so by herself when this book starts. And I have dear friends that I modeled, I rough modeled Matt and Maddie after. Because I just love them so much. And when I do that, I get to feel like I'm spending time with friends of mine, and they
Oh,
now live like across the country from me. And so that's always fun to hang out with them. I feel like I've just spent more time with them. So I kind of choose, like what would be fun people for her to meet? What would be a great balance to her? Um, Lance and Willie. Willie is much more devil may care than she is, and she needs that. Um, and then the woman who runs the RV park,
Mary Helen.
Helen. The name is in honor of a friend of mine who passed. But I knew I needed somebody to be a little bit of a Yoda, uh,
Huh.
and and that's kind of why Mary Helen knows things, But everybody's very reluctant to share what they know beyond a certain point because there are secrets that keep you alive. So it's a little bit of a challenge to draw those out.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm so curious just to see how the conversations continue. Like what else are we going to learn about vampires? And because I mean,
Right.
obviously your book is going to be the canon now on what a vampire actually is and what abilities they do have. So
I mean, it's that in itself is daunting to there there is so much out there in the vampire world, and there's so much that, and historically, like I went back to the very first things I could find written, very first stories I could find um with any kind of vampire theme. So there's that. Then there's the myths that go along with each different culture. When you go to each country, there is another vampire myth that's specific to them. And then there's just biology and physics. It's like, okay, some things just make no sense. So like how do you play with that? And how do you give that a gravity to where it's kind of like, well, okay, if this were to happen, I guess that's how it would happen.
Mhm.
Um, I did an interview with a fella in Australia, and he was talking about the Australian vampire legend, which was totally new to me and extra creepy and gross.
Oh, wow. That makes me want to do more research now. Like, I'm curious about the different cultures.
It's a lot, and then I was like, oh my gosh, how did I not go back to vampires in Jewish culture? And there's this whole
Mm.
Lilith thing, and I started to get into that. And I remember when I started reading it and realized what a deep hole I was about to drop into, and I was just like, I am too tired for you. Like, and I closed the book and I put it down. I'm like, another time, Lilith, I'll get back to you because you're too much right now.
Is I have to know, was it Varney the Vampire? Is that a real book?
That's a real book. That's a
Okay,
real
I
book.
had a feeling it was.
Dumbest title ever, Barney the Vampire, but it's the vampire's last name. It's
Okay.
his surname. Um, and that I found it in Gutenberg books, which are a lot of books that are free.
Hmm.
Um, just because they're so old
The
or
age.
whatever. And it is such a cumbersome read.
Hmm.
So I had to keep putting it down and coming back to it. And as Sugar does, I would get incredulous. I'm like, seriously, you're gonna put manners in front of somebody's life? Like, it would just be wrong. What if we approached this person and conveyed this and we were not true? And then what a faux pas. And yeah, oh, that's out there. Out there.
Funny. That's I just listening, I don't know, just like thinking about the different vampire qualities. I go, of course, I think about Twilight, and I
Mhm.
think
Sure.
the sensory, amplification and things like that. But also in that story, it seems like, at least in the movie, I can't
Mhm.
remember. I read the book, but I can't remember much of it. Um, it's like she already had that crew of people that knew exactly everything about the life, and they knew
Right.
they knew even how a new vampire felt, and they were able to help her along the way,
Right.
and with Sugar, she doesn't really have that, at least at first. She doesn't have any
Right.
of that help, and like you said, the other people living the V life don't necessarily want to share a lot because they have to
Right.
keep.
Yeah. They don't want to share how they make their money. And the book will explain why. Um, yeah, and there are some things you just have to try. But I do have, because I believe this to be true, anything that you're good at, that you're already good at, you're better at as a
Oh,
vampire.
okay, yeah, as a
Just
vampire.
everything, your skills hone, your senses are more acute and if you were a great juggler, you would probably be just stellar, like
And I like
juggling.
that.
Yeah,
It's a juggling sensation, is that what you
yeah,
said?
yeah. But if you stunk at something, like if you were a horrible juggler, like being a vampire doesn't mean like, oh, and look what I can do now. Woo. No,
Right,
no,
and I
you
think
work at it just like everybody else.
most of the lore that I'm used to is everybody's at this level, like everybody jumps up to here.
Hmm.
That's really cool to think. It's still individualistic.
Yeah,
It's
everybody's different at stuff. And like as Matt explains to her, and yeah, it's like, what do you want to work on?
Mhm.
Or not at all?
Right. I know, I heard a radio announcer one time say, if you're a 3 at violin, but you're a 7 at piano, don't try violin. Like, get better at piano. Like, bring yourself
Yeah,
up on one of your strengths, and get
Yeah, because
really good.
yeah, and like in book two, one of her strengths becomes how what she starts to monetize.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and that takes her down a different road that's really, I believe, going to turn into something in book three.
Interesting. I do love how she every once in a while just drops like, oh, maybe I could, do this for a living. What do you think?
Right,
In terms of the
right.
cat. And
Well, that's, as somebody who's kind of like a lifelong entrepreneur, it's something that Mr. Parker and I do all the time. Like we come up
yeah,
with something, we're like, oh, is that our restaurant? Like that's,
fun.
and we never, and he often gets approached about opening a restaurant because he's such an amazing cook. And he's this pizza maven, and he would never open a restaurant. He's like, no, I enjoy my life too much to do that. But yeah, so she's just like wherever she goes, she's like, well, could I do that? Could that be my thing?
Hmm.
Maybe.
I love that. That's fun.
Yeah.
It's my family is actually very I guess entrepreneuristic. What is the word for that?
Entrepreneurial.
Yeah, that what she said. Yeah, they like my mom when the Beanie Babies came out when I was a kid, she made little Beanie Baby sleeping bags. And it was
Oh
just
my
like
God.
two like little piece of material this big, piece of material this big, stick it in there, their little head and face sticks out. I mean their head and
Genius.
their paws. Yeah, just stuff like that. It's like just make some money off of that for a while and then see what's next. I love it.
Exactly. And like how big do you want to live is the other thing.
True.
So,
Because RV life, like I actually took a road trip last year.
mhm.
4.5 months I was on the road just in my car. I mean, I had a storage unit with some stuff, but I lived 4.5 months off of just what was in my car. And it's a little
Yeah.
Toyota, it wasn't much and I loved it. And it was just amazing to be able to have that freedom and just drive.
When we were doing the RV and we weren't in anything near as large as what's pictured behind you, we were on
Oh,
a Sprinter chassis, and yeah, you do get to a place where you're like, I don't remember what's in storage, and I don't care. The only thing that I really missed was my large computer monitor. Like I didn't really have room for a large monitor, but yeah, you're like, these are the clothes that I wear, and you're seeing different people every week, so who cares if you wear them again?
yeah,
And you knew where everything was. Um, yeah, it was perfect. We loved it. We really, and then you get into a house and you're like, this is too much. I mean,
yeah,
eventually, I think you kind of you expand, emotionally to fill the space. But in the beginning, it's too much when you leave an RV, I think. I felt. That's what I ran
And
into.
I feel like we have to fill up the space with something too, and and then you try
Yeah.
to leave downsize, and it's just you have so much stuff. It's just yeah, the RV life. I don't know if I'd want to live the V life, but the RV life, I think I could
Well,
handle
V
that.
life has got some particular challenges. The daylight is really an issue. That's real. What you've heard is
Yeah.
real. Daylight, no good. No good. I mean,
Mm.
Blaine had read a vampire book. I can't remember the name of it. It's Italian, and this fellow's a lemon farmer, and he's a vampire, and he's fine outside during the day, no problem.
Interesting.
I'm like, well, that's good for him.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Good for him.
Yeah, yeah,
That so with the books, so far we have when it comes out, is it going to be ebook and paperback?
yeah. So June 25th is the launch date, and yeah, it will be an ebook and paperback. In fact, it'll look just like this with real
Oh, wait,
paper.
let me do it right. Love it.
Yeah.
There you go. Let's get some screenshots.
Matches the hat.
Where's the mug? Get the mug.
Oh,
There we
yay.
go.
Yeah, I haven't
Very
done
nice.
screenshots. I'll have to do that later.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
Remember the last time we spoke, I was in the dark. I was in a room that was getting darker and darker and darker by the second. Horribly lit. My
I
apologies.
remember that. That was funny. You got
Yeah,
it.
but
You got it on point today. Bright.
you know, it takes me a while, but I get there.
I actually, my last apartment, they've gotten to where there's no central lighting now. When you get
Mhm.
an apartment, it's just like a covered plate that where the light normally would be. And then they have the outlets that you turn on and off. So you plug in a lamp and that's your lighting. You don't get the just the light in the middle of the room. And
Mhm.
at my last apartment, it drove me nuts trying to figure out how to get a lamp that would really light the room. And so when I moved here just about a month ago, I ended up in an apartment that's ADA compliant. And so they have lighting in every room. And I'm just like, I mean, I hate to take an ADA compliant apartment, but it was available and it had
Yeah.
lights. I'm like so excited about that.
Where are you now?
I'm in Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Yeah. I
Huh.
was in Mississippi and then I was in Virginia for a while and now I'm in Connecticut.
We're going to be heading your way soonish.
Awesome. Soonish.
Yeah, we take off like right after 4th of July and head north. Yeah,
Cool. You'll have to let me know when you're in the area.
I will.
Book, are you doing so are you doing any like book tours, things like that?
That would really be organized, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean not book tour, driving and showing your book off at random places,
so
have to have a title.
we usually travel in the summer, we hit the road. And so if you get my newsletter, which is at Honey Parker Books, if you get my newsletter, I post where I'm going to be, what my schedule is. And that way, if you've got a book club in one of those areas, you can get on my calendar and I'll sit in your book club.
Cool.
So that's typically what I do. I do book clubs when I travel.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think
Yeah.
book tour has a connotation I didn't actually mean. I think I was thinking driving around, maybe even RV style and talking about your book. So I think that's what you're saying.
Well, I have thought about just because this book is so in the RV world, I'm like, it would be like a cool time to get back in a van and drive to different RV parks, let them know I'm coming and see if they want to, do a chat. Although I am busy with other things.
That would be such the perfect audience for this book, though.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I've been posting about this, one of the hashtags or two of the hashtags I use are van life and RV living. And I've started to have some new people follow me because of that. So
Yeah,
that's been interesting. And a couple of RV groups have reached out.
that's fun.
Yeah. Haven't heard
Very
from the
cool.
vampires yet, though.
Oh man. Soon enough.
Although there's a every year there's a ball at the Anne Rice Museum, or not museum, Anne Rice House, and she does a vampire ball every year. I think I'm gonna go this year.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. That should be
yeah,
interesting. You get some
yeah,
good photos out of that.
yeah. I would
Yeah.
think. Yeah, I've got a friend who has also written about vampires, and she was like, "Do you want to go with me?" I'm like, yeah, I kind of do.
Reminds
Yeah.
me of last year I went to my first masquerade and I ended up wearing a mask that looked like a cat. It had little
Uh-huh.
whiskers and then little ears and everything. So I was and it had a those little tiny hats that you wear on the side of your head, Uh
Fascinating.
so I was a fancy cat in the hat.
I like that.
Do you get to dress up at the vampire party? I have to know this.
At the Anne Rice thing?
You said, what did you say it was that you were going to
It's
with the
it's
vampires?
yeah, it's a vampire ball or something at the Anne Rice house. Yeah, that's going to be
Yeah.
dress up. I actually have ordered. So when I do book clubs and stuff and signings for Careful-ish, because there's so much alcohol in Careful-ish, I always bring like alcohol swag. I bring stuff to, plastic monkeys and little umbrellas and cocktail stuff, and I give those out. So I just ordered a bunch of vampire fangs and some temporary bat tattoos and stuff like
That's
that.
great.
Well,
That's
I'm going to do a book signing here in Bay St. Louis in August after we get back from the road. And this is such a dress up town. And the woman who owns the venue and a couple other women had said to me, the venue that we're going to be doing this at, called 100 Men Hall, they're like, oh, and everybody's going to dress like vampires, right? And I'm like, well, that never even crossed my mind. They're like, well, we have to dress up. We have to dress up. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I guess I'm gonna have like fans and fangs and red sunglasses. And I don't know how deep in I'll go, but a little
that's
something.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one of the things that a gift that I got recently is it's not a book, it's a little cover basically, but I have it over here. It's the Ultimate Reading Challenge. And it has a bunch of little envelopes in it, and each of them have a little prize inside, like little bookmarks, little, things like that. But you
Mhm.
can't get to it until you complete a reading challenge. And so it's like attend an author event, grab a book off the shelf at the library, only based on the cover to read it.
Mhm.
Things like
Oh,
that.
that's fun.
One of them- yeah, it's really fun. It really gets me back into books and making sure that I'm, really reading. I
Yeah.
actually one of the challenges was to read a book that I hated in high school. The only one I could think of was Lord of the Flies. For some reason, I did not like that book, and I made myself listen to it again. I
And
remember the reason I didn't like it is one single scene. I still don't like the scene, but I think that one scene messed the whole book up for me. But
yeah.
anyway, one of the challenges is to hook something that is in the book you read. And I was thinking about V Life today, and I was like, probably not the book to do that challenge with.
No, is there any food in? Yeah, there is. There is food in the book. There's
Yeah, I'll have to go back and see if I can find something that's not out of the woods, very raw.
Well, you're already past the lemon tart, and then there
Art,
is
okay.
there's a pivotal cookie coming up. You
Okay.
haven't gotten to the pivotal cookie yet.
Excellent. I look forward to that then. Okay, maybe that'll be my go-to.
It's
My
my
challenge.
favorite cookie.
Interesting.
Mm.
Okay. I got to keep reading so now I can get it. That's
Yeah,
fun.
yeah,
Oh, I'm so excited. All right. So June 25th, which we're recording on June 20th right now, so that's in 5 days.
right.
I'm going to post this video sometime next week, so we may be before or after the launch date, but
Yeah.
we're getting it off of honeyparkerbooks.com.
Yeah, so you can go to honeyparkerbooks.com. It'll also be at Amazon. Mr. Parker set up a direct link for me. Vampiresinvans.com. If you go to vampiresinvans.com, it takes you to the Amazon page
That's
with the
awesome.
book. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and Honey Parker Books is that's my website. And if you want to join the mailing list, I do specials sometimes, I'll let you know if a book's dropping down to 99 cents. Uh yeah, so it's kind of worth it. And I only bug your world once a month. I don't show up
Yeah.
all the time.
The cool
And
thing,
every email, every newsletter comes with a cocktail recipe.
yes. Yes, absolutely. And the cool thing about your newsletters too is like you drop the humor in there, just like in the books, and I love it. It's like you can take you drop the humor, but you also drop the wisdom, which is such a beautiful combination. And I just
Oh,
love
thank
that
you.
about all of your writing.
Thank you. I try. I try. I appreciate
Well, you
that.
succeed.
Oh,
Absolutely. Well,
appreciation, Dan.
yeah, absolutely. Do you have anything else you want to tell us about the book?
Oh gosh. Anything else about the book? Probably. I'll probably remember as soon as we get off. But I just tried to make it as lifelike as possible. And life is funny and it's sad and it's revealing, and then you have to learn something all over again, and that's it. That is V life is life, basically, just with a few extra skills and things. Yeah.
I feel like that's our new hashtag. V life is life.
V V life is life. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, honey, thank you so much for letting me interview you today, and I am very much looking forward to the book coming out. I get a little sneak peek, which is really fun right now, but I definitely want to get that paperback in my hands. I look forward to
Well,
it.
thank you. Well, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and enjoy Connecticut. And I'll let you know when I'm headed your way.
All right, sounds fabulous.
Yeah,
All right, thanks, honey.
you bet.